Today I'm extremely happy to report that I did not hate this book. I just, based on everything that you see and hear and everything, this book had a real strong chance of being just the worst. And at the end of the day, by and large, when I came out the other side, I'm mostly positive on it. Don't get me wrong. I have some complaints, and we'll talk about those as we go through the video. But for the most part, I had way more fun than I expected to. And of course, we are talking about Dungeon Crawler Carl, the current reigning champion of BookTube darling books. So I was kind of nervous about going into this one because I've already once this year completely trashed a BookTube darling, and I didn't want to have to do it twice in the same year. And I'm very happy to say that I don't. We're going to talk, we got good things to say about this one. Now, this is a lit RPG. I've never read a lit RPG ever, although the idea of them sounds fascinating to me and it sounds great. I'm a nerd. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons and RPG video games, or at least video games with that mechanic built into them, are some of my favorite of all time. Are just RPGs in general. Metroidvanias, Castlevania being like the shining star of those, and just leveling up and then getting to a boss level and getting your ass handed to you, and you go back out and you're going to grind, and you're going to grind for about 4 hours, and you'll come back and you'll do it again. Like, it's just, everything about this is like a core part of my being. So the idea, then on top of that, take the fact that I read. I love books so much, and then you take one of my loves, which is my RPG mechanics in my video games. I play turn-based RPGs to this day. Anyway, and you mix that with a book, and it just sounds like a match made in heaven. It sounds like something that I personally would love. I just haven't personally gone out and read one yet. So the idea of putting those together sounds absolutely wonderful to me. What doesn't sound wonderful to me is taking all of that, putting it together, and then making it some ridiculous slapstick comedy that just is super cringe in the way that it's written, developed, and presented. And the way that people sell this book to you sounds like that's exactly what this is. Then you go so far as to like read the back book flap, and it doesn't help much because it's like, oh, Carl, and he gets stuck under the planet with his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend's kitty cat, Princess Donut. And you're like, God, this sounds not good. Like, really, like, epic next level cringe is how that reads to me. So you're going to give me a book and it's like an RPG video game and all the mechanics are built right into the narrative of the story and leveling up and all of that fun stuff, and you're going to tell me that it's in the style of something like a Fallout or a Castlevania. I want that. I want that in my life, like right now. What I don't want is that exact same book done in the style of High on Life. And that is really what people make this sound like when they're selling it. So stop that. Stop trying to sell this book like that. Because that's not what this is. This is way better than that, for the most part. So long story short, and with all of that out of the way, how was it? Was it actually any good? And like I said, way better than I expected it to be. And that cringe level comedy that it feels like this is constantly being sold as was kept to a very low minimum. Instead, what we got was this really strong driving force of Carl. Carl and his whole personality, the voice of Carl, was just the central, like, force that just drove you through this story, carried me through this story. I really enjoyed him and his character. And when I say the voice of Carl, I mean like the narrative voice of him, not necessarily the voice of the voice actor, because actually, if I'm being quite honest, I almost always download the audiobook and read like in between while listening and stuff like that. Everybody always just raves about the audiobook of this book. Oh, it's the greatest, you have to listen to it, or something like that. And I actually found the audiobook quite off-putting at first. It was difficult to get into, specifically because the voice he chose for Carl was just I don't know the voice actor's name. The voice actor doing his very best impersonation of Patrick Warburton. And it was like so much so that if before I looked up who the voice actor was, if you would have told me, oh, this book was narrated by Patrick Warburton, I probably would have just been like, oh yeah, that checks out, because it was so specifically that. It was kind of, like I said, a little bit off-putting, kind of because I wouldn't have, in my mind, Carl didn't feel like the voice of Patrick Warburton and Carl went together. That's not the voice I would have picked for him, I guess is what I'm saying. You get over it quickly and you kind of move on and you just kind of accept that that's what Carl's going to sound like in this universe, and it's fine. It's not distracting. It's not bad. It's okay. But anyway, back to the voice of Carl. Like I said, the voice of Carl being the narrative voice, and just his whole attitude and his persona, the way he views the world, the way he attacks the world, just it very early on in the book, he was talking about the cat and the show cat and taking it to shows, and he stops and he's like, well, let me tell you about people that take cats to shows or something like that. And he's just like, you know what? Those guys. And he just moves on to talking about something else. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is fun. And he approaches everything in the book with that exact same attitude. And that character, his character, really was the shining star in this entire book. Carried me through. He was the best. I love Carl. Now, jumping back over to that slapstick, silly comedy that I was really afraid that this book was going to beat me over the head with, and I was just going to have to walk away because I wouldn't have been able to do it, is mostly not present in the book. Or kept to a minimum. Although I was so disappointed when the achievement system was completely, unfortunately, ruined, because that achievement system had the potential to be one of the greatest things of the entire book, one of the greatest features. It was pure 100% situational comedy gold. Like the fact that they kill a room full of like goblin babies or something like that, and it's like, new achievement, baby killer. If it would have stopped right there, it would have been probably one of the funniest jokes in the entire book. But then he has to go new achievement, whatever it is, and then add on some ridiculous, overly long slapstick comedy joke to try and make the achievement funny, and instead it robs what is the situational comedy of these achievements being given to ridiculous things that you shouldn't be getting achievements for. But that's how video games work, and that's what makes it funny. And then he tries to add the slapstick comedy joke onto the end of it, and not only is the joke not funny, but it robs what was one of the funniest parts of the book of all of its humor. Oh, it frustrated me so much. Every time it was like new achievement, and then it went on to just ruin the joke. I was like, stop doing that, please. Oh, it could have been the greatest thing in the book. Instead, it was like the one bad thing that I really hated. Anyway, whatever. But that was by far my biggest complaint with the entire book. And then there's Princess Donut. And this is another one. I was a little bit skeptical, a little bit worried exactly how this character was going to be handled and how it was going to play. And the second that she gets a voice and is able to speak, she becomes the most horrendously obnoxious and annoying thing in the entire book. And I thought, oh no. This is exactly what I was afraid of. And then Matt Dinniman, the author, very quickly dials her back and tones her down to the point where she very quickly becomes a quite inoffensive side character. And I was like, oh, well, at least that didn't last long. Like she becomes very tolerable very quickly. She's basically there. She's holding up her half of the narrative without being overly obnoxious and without being a drain on the experience. And it's about all I could ask for Princess Donut. Although, like I said, I didn't necessarily like Donut, but she did either play into or create a lot of situations that then played directly into that attitude and voice of Carl. She would create a situation, he would react, and him and the way that he reacts and the way that he exists and goes through the world was, like I said, my driving force for the book. So she was there as a mechanic that really played into one of my favorite parts of the book. So I can very much so appreciate where she was and how she existed and what she was doing. And like I said, I very much so appreciated that he kept her obnoxious factor at a minimum. Then I guess we have to talk about the world building, and I was genuinely impressed with the level of world building, the level of detail, the level of intricacy. We're going down into the video game world. I expected a much more bare bones system than what I got, and you get in there and it's not only like the game mechanics are being fleshed out, but the aliens are being fleshed out and the alien worlds are being fleshed out, and how this happened is being fleshed out, and who all is involved, and there's politics involved, and the politics of the aliens, and then there's different factions and there's different groups, and none of it's very well fleshed out. It's little glimpses here and there, and you get just this idea of this much, much, much wider world that is in the background of this, I don't know, book and what's happening there. And I'm assuming we will get more as the books go on. We'll get a little bit more nuggets of information fleshing this out, but just the sheer glimpses of what is there were quite impressive. Like, I didn't expect it to be quite as detailed as it was. I expected a little bit more of a fun romp through this silly little video game world, and a lot less going on behind the curtain, so to speak. And like I said, I don't know. What we got was so just tiny little nuggets here and there, but it teases and it hints at a much larger world and a much larger machinations happening in the background. And I just was quite fascinated and impressed, to be quite honest, because I didn't expect the level of intricacy or detail that I was seeing. And then, of course, there's the progression itself and all the game mechanics and all of that part of the book. And this, once again, was another one of the true standouts for me. One of the things that made it so much fun and engaging for me personally, just because I engage with that, and just going through the achievements. And, well, the achievements were fucking terrible, and just the worst part of it. But he let a lot of the other situational comedy just ride without making a real overt joke of it. Like, for example, when they go and he has this little group of characters that he's talking to, and they're getting ready to go up to the level boss. He's like, all right, you're going to do this, we're going to do that. Me and Donut are going to go over here. We're going to grind for 4 hours or however many hours, and then we're going to meet back up and we're going to go fight this fucking boss. And that's the stuff that gets me. That's the funny shit, because that's how you're doing it. You're playing your game and you're like, okay, I got to do X, I got to do Y, I'm going to go get this, I'm going to go get that, I'm going to grind a little bit, and then we're going to go take that fucker on. That's the situational comedy that I wanted, and for the most part, that's what I got. And I was just so genuinely happy and satisfied with that part of the experience. All of the game mechanics, all the progression mechanics, I was genuinely becoming invested in like what they were doing and how they were acquiring experience and leveling up, to the point where when they ended up fighting that level 90 something boss that was supposed to wipe out the entire party, and they kind of game the system and they kill him off, and then they got no experience for it. I was like, what? Get the fuck out of here. Like, I was just as irritated with that as I would have been in a game situation if it would not have allotted me my experience for, maybe not doing it quite the right way. You kind of break the game a little bit. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, anyway, the fact that I was that invested, and the fact that I was like, the second that experience bonus didn't happen, I was like, you know what? Fuck you. Like, I was like, but that's a good sign. The fact that I was that invested is a good thing. But by the end of the book, I was way more invested than I expected to be, and I was having way more fun than I expected that I would have with this book. At times, it felt like a real solid, genuine 8 out of 10, and then I kept going back and forth. Maybe I'll give it a 7, maybe I'll give it an 8. I think I'll go right down the middle, and I'll call it a 7.5, because that feels fair for my experience with the book, especially considering there were some things that just, man, so irritating. But by and large, good time. Real good time. Anyway, everybody, as always, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.